So with this, I'd like to now turn to a different wavelength, I think is a good way to say it. My new friend, Brian Collins, we met maybe, what, 2 years ago, I think? Three years ago? Wow, time flies. And every time I met this guy, first of all, I didn't know what to make of him. But second, I thought, I think there's something brilliant in there, and I just need to sit and listen. So I'm going to now offer you the opportunity to listen to one of the most diabolically brilliant people I've met, a person who describes himself, as others have described him, as having two right brains. Brian Collins.
I'm doomed after that introduction. I'm just going to be doomed. I hope Ivo and Matthew and Benjamin's outcome is more optimistic, because we have design offices in New York City and in Amsterdam, or soon in Amsterdam, and one in San Francisco. And now I want to open up one in Moscow, right across from the Kremlin. So, I'm going to start a little bit. I'm going to build on something that you had said earlier, Robert, which is we're in an era now that demands us to be strategically opportunistic. And as a creative person, I'm strategically promiscuous. Which means that we're in an era where we want to look to the future. But because I'm creative, I like to look as much to the past. You had said earlier that there's a difference between rationality and intuition, and I actually think they're actually common. What rationality does is try to control pattern, and what intuition actually is a heightened pattern recognition system. So what intuition does is discover patterns. So I think those are similar. So what I'd like to do is discover some patterns, but I'd also like to start in the past. This is going to be a very different presentation than the conversation, which was extraordinary, that we just had. But I'm going to make it a personal one. I'm going to talk about a place called Lexington, Massachusetts. Has anyone ever been here? So I grew up in this town. It was the first battle of the American Revolution was fought here. It was founded in the 17th century, and it is a diabolically colonial town. It looks like this. My house is about 4 blocks. This is me in 1960. The entire town is filled with Cape Cod houses that look like this. It's very humble. There are maybe thousands of homes that all look like that. That's my mom, and that is me. And we grew up in a house that looked like this. That's what the inside of the houses look like. Now, in about 1965, 1966, in my neighborhood, houses that didn't look like this start appearing. About 2 blocks away from me, this house appeared. Now, if you live in Europe, or if you live in Los Angeles or the West Coast, this kind of architecture is common. But in New England in 1965, a flat roof makes no sense. This was shocking. It was like I was suddenly ambushed by the Jetsons. And then this appears 2 blocks away, and then this appears 2 blocks away, and then I had friends of my family, my parents. This is what the inside of their house looked like. It didn't look like that other picture. It looked like that, and it looked like this. Suddenly, the future had arrived about 50 years ahead of schedule, and I was amazed by this. I'm like, Mom, this is really cool furniture. I'm like, yeah, it is, but it's not. It's too mod. But I loved it. Now, the thing about it, and the reason why this happened, does anyone know who that middle gentleman is? That's Walter Gropius. He left Germany, moves to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and founds the Harvard Graduate School of Design. And those are his students, his graduate students, who he started the Architects Collaborative with. And they started a design office, and then architects don't have a lot of money. There was plenty of farmland in Lexington, so they could build houses that looked like the Jetsons. And then one of my neighbors, who lived in a Jetsons house, brought me to their office when I was 10. And I saw my first Luxo lamp, I saw my first Eames chair, and I was blown away. That was a chair, it looked like something on Star Trek. This didn't look like colonial furniture. I'm like, that's fantastic. Then he also gave me a book about graphic design, because I loved to draw. And he said, Brian, I just came back from Paris. This is a book on the work of the Pushpin Studios, and I opened it up, and I became enamored. That's the letter A. There are tons of letter A's. I was just amazed by graphic design and illustration. All of this stuff is work done by a very celebrated graphic designer named Milton Glaser. I'm mesmerized by this stuff. And I'm suddenly then mesmerized by, at the time, I'm 9 years old, psychedelic had taken hold in American design, and I knew this is fantastically imaginable. And to me, it felt like the future had arrived in graphic design. Now, something interesting has happened in Boston in 1960 and 1975, is the future arrived here ahead of schedule. Creta Kent had done this very famous stamp in the early 1970s, and then to take over a massive, massive gas tank that sat on the outskirts of Boston. You could see it on the flight path to Logan. It was a massive gas tank. The Boston Gas hired her to cover it. It was a really cold, sort of inhuman, technological behemoth, and she just covered it with that. Now, when I was a kid, that was mad. It looked like somebody had taken crayons and covered it. And I'm like, that's fantastic. I want to do that. Now, Boston looked like this. When you think of Boston, this is probably what comes to mind. This is Beacon Hill. But in the late 60s and the early 70s, this suddenly appeared in the middle of the city. If you like brutalism, this is about as good as brutalism gets. It's concrete, and it looked like a cross between Planet of the Apes meets Star Wars, and I thought it was great. Don't try to walk through that plaza in the middle of winter, though, you'll freeze your ass off. And then in Harvard Square, the design research company opens up, and they create, there's also ways that you can buy the future right down the street. You could buy ornaments from Finland. There's the first place, this brand called Marimekko could be sold in Harvard Square. And then the guy who founded this, who was also an architect who worked for Walter Gropius, his name was Benjamin Thompson, who would later go on to help design Faneuil Hall. He loved futuristic stuff that was expensive and cheap. I think that was like a $10 inflatable chair you could get there, or you could get a George Nelson chair. And what I loved about this stuff is it all looked like the future to me. And I'm like, damn, this is great. I went home, my favorite television show was this cheesy, crappy thing called Lost in Space. It was so horrible, and they were wearing fantastic Mylar zipper outfits. I'm like, that's fantastic. This took place in the year 1997. We're going to go into suspended animation, and we're going to go to Alpha Centauri. And after you had great adventures, I'm watching this is compelling. I'm watching, and all of a sudden, the chair that I had seen in the store is in 1997. They're sitting in the chair that I just saw in Harvard Square. I'm like, that's fantastic. So I realized at about 10, what designers do is designers make the future. Every piece, everything you see here, everything you're sitting in, everything you're wearing was created by a designer in anticipation of the future. Design is ultimately an optimistic act about the future. So then my dad took me, and this movie came out at that time, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I was amazed by this. Because after you flew through the space shuttle and you landed in the space station, you would stay at the Space Hilton, which is fantastic. And you would stay at Bell Telephone, but more than anything else, you could go to the Howard Johnson's Earthlight Room. How many here people know about Howard Johnson's? Okay, right? Howard Johnson's was such an indelible part of American culture that Stanley Kubrick could not imagine it not existing past the year 2001. And there it is. So, now the funny thing was, Howard Johnson was invented in Massachusetts, in Quincy, Massachusetts, actually Walston Beach, Massachusetts. And it was an incredible place. And it expanded. It was the nation's, and actually the world's largest French restaurant franchise at one point. That over like 1,200 locations. You could go from Maine to Texas to California, and you could hit Howard Johnson's all around the United States. And they're incredible places. It was sort of like modernism meets colonial architecture. It was sort of kind of hip. But the thing about it that I loved is we couldn't really afford to go to Disneyland. This is as close as I was going to get to Disneyland. And there was one on Cape Cod that I would go to all the time. They built one in Times Square. And on every location, there was Simple Simon met the Pieman. There was this fantastic weather vane that invited you to come and taste our wares. And that was this symbol. It was a welcoming symbol that said, come on in. And it was amazing. You get 25 different flavors of ice cream in the 1960s. And you're 8, 9 years old, they'll bust your head. The thing about it, and it no longer exists because they were at highways across the country. While I was getting ice cream, my parents could go and get a drink. Now, these places don't exist anymore. But what they eventually went into was like motels, and it was such an important part of American culture that Mad Men did the best episode. It took place at Howard Johnson's. It was the best episode. Now, it was incredible. They were playing the future. It was all going to be fantastic. And then and I loved it. And then, slowly, Howard Johnson's vanishes. And Howard Johnson's vanishes by a company that says, we don't need waiters, we don't need tables, we don't need forks, we don't need spoons, we don't need plates, we don't need napkins. All we need is something else. And this is what happens to McDonald's when an other version of the future appears. I'm sorry, this is what happens to Howard Johnson's. It vanishes. Because it didn't see this coming. Doesn't see McDonald's. No plates, no forks. Napkins and a bun and in your car. And it completely disintermediated the future. So as a designer, I saw this happening in the 20s, designers don't make the future. We're in competition with it. And that's an interesting thought for me as a creative person. I think there are three things that form my work as a designer and how I go about creating the future with our clients. The acceleration of change. This is, the rule used to be that you'd reinvent yourself once every 7 to 10 years. Now it's every 2 to 3 years. She said this about a year and a half ago. I think it's you reinvent yourself every year now. That's Ingenuity from Pepsi. This is a very interesting story for those of you who work in business and involved with brand in any way. 2015 Harvard Business Review. The declining value of brands and the rise of consumer experience and consumer relationships, basically the design of the experience. It starts around 2007, 2008. Brand value, which has always been, the bellmark, the thing that was so important, has been replaced by customer value, the repeat worth of existing customers who are known. The other thing, complexity has exploded, obviously. It used to be you could build an incredible company about extraordinary product, great packaging, great distribution, and great promotion. Now, you've got all this happening all at the same time. And they're equally important depending upon what business you're in. So, I'm a designer. I'm like, okay, this is a mess. Now it's designers that come and step in this because we know how to create the future. How many people have been into a bookstore and seen thousands of these books? Design thinking, design strategy, they're endless. And here's what's interesting to me. Not only is the conversation on design exploding, the conversation in business and design is exploding. Big corporations are buying design firms in droves. This is from a Fast Company. IBM invests $100 million to expand design business. The rise of the in-house agency. Companies are bringing design in-house because they know it's so important to them. This is a very interesting chart. This is the timeline of design and tech activity. These are a list of the design companies that have been purchased by Facebook, Accenture, McKinsey, Capgemini, Deloitte. A total of 42 design firms have been acquired since 2004, 50% of which have been acquired within the last year. So design is exploding. Now the interesting thing is it's also shifting. This is a course that you can take at the Harvard Business School that's taught by, about design, that's taught by an accountant. Sorry, friends from my accountants. This is a real article from The Guardian from last year. Design is far too important to be left to design. So design, which is why I entered this, because I loved it, we've become about, design is money. And the interesting thing about that is design is now so important that many business people believe they understand design better than designers do. We'll take it from here, thank you very much. And they're going to apply the same kind of science, the same kind of discipline, the same kind of rationality to drive it. Now, who can I turn to? Who can help me figure this out? Who's looking at this? Who has extensive foresight to look? My friend Charles Barkley.
And analytics don't work at all. They're just a crap to some people who were really smart, made up and tried to get in the game because they had no talent. Because they had no talent to be able to play.
I agree with you on that.
So smart guys wanted to fit in. So they made up a term called analytics. Analytics don't work.
Yes. That's the best foresight. Thank you, Charles. So here's what's going on. Now, rationality is the search for expertise, right? And that's the values of control, sequence, analysis, rationality, right? The other thing that, the reason why I became, and I went to art school. The reason why I went to art school, because I wanted to experiment, I wanted to invent, I wanted permission to make mistakes and invent the future. So I'm fascinated by the fantastical, the complex, the abstract, and the intuitive. So the puzzle is, these things have to work in balance and in conversation with each other all the time. I think it comes down to discipline and passion. You need both. We absolutely need both. If we only have discipline, the trains will arrive on time, but what's in the cars will be boring. If we only have passion, the trains will never leave the station. So what's happened over the last few years is in the attempt for business to understand how powerful design is as a tool for growth, as a tool for building customer experience, as a tool for building customer relationships. That's what happened is the left-hand side of our heads, our brain, our rationality is starting to take over far too much of the conversation. And that's what happens. And so this is what's interesting to me. Do you all have your cell phones on you? Okay. Take them out. Pull them out. All of them. Hold them up over your head. Where's Chris Galvin? Is Chris here? Chris, at your height, how many different models of phones did Motorola make? 50. Do you remember when everyone had crazy phones and it was a fashion statement? There were like thousands of them. It was unbelievable. The level of innovation was incredible. And this thing appears. And watch what happens. That kind of crazy innovation vanishes. We work in perfection shadow. In the process of correcting design flaws, distancing itself from the gimmickry of its peers, Apple has left behind playfulness and personality. In the last 5 or 6 years, I've had one dominant tone. Apple design is good. It might even be great. And the more a gadget looks and feels like an Apple product, the better it is. This has become the dominant aesthetic of our era. This is an article from about a year ago from Dan Nosowitz at Fast Company. There used to be, let me go back up with this. So I had dinner with this guy. He actually said over his dining room table with his family, Steve Jobs said, Apple needs to make insanely great products. And I'm like, I'm in front of Steve Jobs. He actually said insanely great. Now the problem is insanely great is not what we're doing. What we're doing now is a minimal viable product. Imagine coming to work. Let's make something that's insanely great. No, today what we're going to do is we're going to make minimal viable product. Let's do something that no one's ever seen before. Let's invent. Let's create tomorrow. Now we're going to make minimal viable product. Here's what's happened with minimal viable thinking. We've all become very well behaved. Our left brains have taken over everything. We want to be very well behaved and very structured, very rational. Remember this logo? This is the Apple logo I grew up with. This is what it looks like now. Do you remember this logo? Yahoo! This is what it is now, very polite. It's like an invitation to a dance. Do you remember this? It's like a kind of fucked up flea market, right? But no, we're very, very behaved. And we get this. I love this, watch this. I love these are identities from the leading edge of American technology, and we want innovation, originality, and experimentiveness, and this is what they did in the last year. They did that, they did this, and they did this. So, minimal viable product, I don't think is going to get us to where we need to go quickly enough. And in fact, what I'm going to suggest that we do instead is another value that at our company we call maximum fucking love. I'm not kidding. Now, how do you create a place that does that? So, what I did is, because I'm creatively and strategically promiscuous, I looked at the past a lot. And so what I did in this case is I looked at the work of Ray Eames and Charles Eames, who designed this chair. And I did a lot of work and research into the work of Ray Eames, who was a remarkable designer. And here's what she said about the purpose of design that has informed my company for the last 10 years. That's Ray and her husband, Charles. Ray is often overshadowed by Charles, but she was the soul of the company. The role of designer is basically that of a good host, anticipating the needs of the guest. That word anticipating is a really interesting word. Anticipating. It's kind of love, what might they like? And love is a kind of future-proofing. How do we anticipate what people might like? How do we give them something that they don't even know how to articulate yet? So when we designed our company, this is our office we moved into 2 years ago, I took our chair and I put it in the corner. I thought, let's build the office around that intent. I painted the ceiling orange to remind me of Howard Johnson's. So Howard Johnson's ceiling. And then every project we begin starts in America offline. Every project we begin begins in our library. We look at mythology, history, psychology, fashion, photography, history, maps. We do not begin any project looking on Instagram or Facebook or Google, nothing. Every project begins in the library. We look to see who else has solved their problem before. This is the design of the space we did. I wanted to be open, very much inspired by the Architects Collaborative I visited when I was 11. This is an important room. This is a room because about 10 members of my team, I have about 40 people in New York, about 10 members of my team have kids. We designed a room for them to come and work in during the day. So if they want to come and play, they can work, they can do their homework, they show up after school, starting at about 2 o'clock. There are 3 or 4 kids in our office all day long. If we can't create new models about how we're going to be creative, we were going to lose a lot of good parents. So there's a place for them and their kids in the company. So I'm going to tell you 3 projects that we did that I think might be interesting as a proof point of how we develop future-proofing work. Everybody with me so far? Okay. Anybody bored yet? Okay. How many people
left.
They already left. They're gone. Thank you. Do you use Spotify?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Spotify users. Thank goodness. Spotify is now the world's leading streaming service. They've become, in many places, they are now the world's sort of music brand. And they've become incredibly influential. When they hired us a couple of years ago, they said, look, we've reached the top of our growth. We've got all the early adopters. We need now to scale. We need to get big. We have an incredible system. We have an amazing engineering. We have an amazing product. People, we want to grow. And this is what an engineering company does when they think they want to create their message. What they do is they go to an advertising agency and they make everything look the same. And they want to structure it, they want to organize it. This is how a technology company images themselves. Black and green and black and green and black. And it looked like the interface, and it didn't look like music. And they had about 50 designers working there, and all this stuff looked like this. This is what a bad advertising agency does. If you work with advertising agencies, what the bad ones do is they take pictures of your customer and they put headlines over it. That's what the advertising agency does. If you're doing that right now, just call your agency. Get a better art director. So I said, music doesn't look like this. Music behaves. Also, you can't just look like the culture. You have to be a part of the culture. You have to add to it. Because brands that now add and participate and make the culture better that you're working with are the ones that gain credibility and gain momentum. So this is what music looks like. Music looks like this. It's inventive, it's expressive, it's visual. The history of design and music and art is interrelated. So I said, you need to behave like this. The other thing I said is music is a natural pharmaceutical. It changes you instantly. It either makes you feel better, or if I'm blue, I'll listen to some really bad music. Or if I'm blue and I really want to get happy, I'll listen to Mozart. When no one's listening, I'll listen to ABBA. So don't tell me. You know, you do too. You do, I know. So watch this. This is natural pharmaceuticals. Yeah, she's great. She knows it. So music changes you like that. So this is what the engineers and this is what the ad agency had said. You're going to be green or you're going to be black, or you're going to be black or you're going to be green. I'm like, no, that's stupid. So what about color? And you should be as expressive as music itself. And then what about those psychedelic posters that I loved when I was a kid? What was incredible about them, if you saw Jimi Hendrix or Janis Joplin, these posters were made by a place called the Fillmore West in San Francisco. This is where psychedelic was pretty much invented and refined. So what happened is you not only saw the venue, the Fillmore West, but you also saw the performer. I'm like, that's what Spotify needs to be. Because every time you see the performer, I want to see the brand that's bringing it to me. So we looked at psychedelic posters. And we said, how do they do that? Well, they did things like tritones and duotones. For those of you who don't have an art degree, it means different kind of colors. So they did stuff that looks like this. I'm like, that's fantastic. And then they said, let's take the things that people do, that play, pause, and record, and let's turn that into a graphic language. Play, pause, record, and let's start putting it together. So every time you see Spotify, it's going to feel like jazz, music, hip-hop, rock. So the problem too, we get all these images from Warner Brothers. These aren't our images. We get the same images that everybody else gets, but we have to make them our own. And so we have to put them through this filter, and we create these systems where it's Pharrell. And all these different performers have to sort of live, and they have to feel different, has to feel energetic, and has to feel alive. And so this stuff started to feel like great fun. So all of a sudden, it starts to look like music, down to the smallest thing, like a banner. Now here's the thing. You've got a few hundred designers, and you don't want to put them into a hole of software. So we designed a software program that they can make this stuff fast. Because if we can't make it fast, it's going to be a problem. So you get an image from Warner Brothers, and you drop it into something we call the colorizer. And you drop it in, and instantly what it does, it gives you some options. You can create colors, you can do any sorts of number of things. What that allows a designer to do is create something that he thinks is reflective of the energy he wants for that piece of communication. It drops it in, or you can do it random. And what this does is it instantly creates an image for the designer and the creative people who are working on it, and it gets turned into stuff. We collapse the production time from 2 days to about 4.5 hours for a lot of communications within Spotify using technology. This is now 2 years old. It's used by all their advertising agencies, used by all their different companies to help bring the thing to life. So we do environments. This is how we launched it. And so this is what I'm really proud of, is this is what it used to look like, and the next scene you're going to see is it was stuff that was done by my office as well as designers from around the world. So that's what Spotify used to look like, and if you've ever been online, this is what they look like now. This looks like music. And all the designers in Spotify get to create different kind of stuff. So you can put your fingerprint on your work. If you're a creative person, that's really important because you want to see your version of Kanye West, or you want to see your version of Justin Timberlake. So here's what happens. Because we now own color, we get to do stuff like this. A few weeks ago, if you were walking through Union Square, you saw these suddenly appear. For about a week, they were just up on the wall. And if you were smart, you kind of knew what it was. But if you weren't, we explained it for you. But all of a sudden, because you have color, now you can get playful. You didn't expect to have a conversation about color today, did you? No, sorry. Another thing we do really quickly. This is talk about a battleground. This is a battleground. This is the worst battleground sort of in America, the shopping aisle. But it's being replaced by this. The problem is American companies are still designing for the shopping aisle and not for this. So what happens is we get hideous packaging that looks like that. That's binding. That's not designed for my home. That's designed for the 2 seconds I have to recognize it on a shelf. So we take it, we throw it in our cabinets, and all that shit's screaming at us. But this is designed for my life. It's designed to live with me. That's how Apple designs products, because I know I'm going to live with it all day long. So we had a company that came to us and they said, chapstick and the entire category had not been touched. This is a very small thing. But can we reinvent this category? We said, sure. Let's take a look how people behave in the category. How many people use chapstick here? How many times a day do you use it? Lip balm, how many times? 10? 5? You? 6? Anyway. What we did is we figured out the number of people who actually use chapstick. Like the women who used it, they use it 10 times a day. We had them open up their purses, and here's what we found. It's terrifying. But here's what we found. This is just sort of looking for a mistake. You know, someone chipped over their purse, and we were like, look at what, everything's a cylinder, so you can't find it. So people who want to use want to use a lip balm all they want, they can't find it. They're all hunting for it. It's either shaped like a lipstick or a pencil or a marker. So I was like fascinated by what other kind of shapes are there. So we started working with our clients. I was fascinated by this shape. This is an interesting shape. So are these. So are those. How many people have these? This has become the #1 lip balm in the category. I didn't, we're expecting to have this conversation, but on? Good, here. Anybody? That's mint. That's good. Yes, this is actually mint too. Do you want that? Here, anybody? Here. So, shall I? Anybody? Game? So what we did is we designed them. Anybody back there? Yes. Anybody else? Who else is brave? Good, here we go. So,
do you have a t-shirt cannon too?
I don't have a t-shirt cannon, either of those. They're fine. Anybody over here? Come on, guys. It's easy. There you go. Grab that. Rob, here, for you. Thanks. So, here's what's nuts about this. Pfizer owns chapstick. Chapstick has become the #1 brand in less than 5 years because we saw an insight that nobody else saw. And so it's crazy. Now here's what's nuts about it. People have gone absolutely nuts about it. They take pictures of it. They do videos about it. As of last week, there are over half a million videos about this stuff. They don't like it. They love it. Watch this. This is very strange. Very, very, very strange. So we do a lot of work with Target, and one of our buyers said, in my daughter's junior high school, when as a signal for when they're going out, that my daughter bought her boyfriend grapefruit, and this is how they signal that they're going out. They hacked the design. We didn't know they were going to do that. But all of a sudden it became really interesting. So something that we didn't even know about happened. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is our work with Facebook Amp. It's a personal artificial intelligence system with Messenger. Now, this was an interesting thing. This is technology that was human-assisted. So how do we make it feel and look human? When I was a kid, this is how Boston Gas made something that was very inhuman feeling human, by making it look painterly, by making it look like someone was drawing it, like someone had dumped crayons on it. So how do we do that with technology? So we had to create a symbol and a design language for Messenger that felt human. And so this is what we've done. It changes, it evolves, it speaks to infinite, it's constantly making itself. It's constantly evolving, constantly shifting. And it makes different kinds of things all the time. And has a sense that it's personal, and we made hundreds of these things. And so what happens when you have this product is it creates an interface. You can ask things like, can you help me order flowers for my mom's birthday? And hi, I'm your personal assistant and messenger. You can reach me here anytime. And you can give you things about where the best hamburger is. Do you want to make you a reservation? And then we signal visually how that appears. And the fact that it feels like it's painted, feels like someone's actually making it, gives the interface a sense of humanity. It might even give a sense of charm and whimsy that makes it, I think, feel a little bit more human. So the last thing I'm going to say is this. Howard Johnson's really love their customers, and they signal that by putting the Simple Simon symbol on the top of every restaurant they had and every hotel they had in the world. Now, here's what I'll tell you. A couple weeks ago, my sister found out that I was going to be speaking to you, and she called me, and she said, I was on the Cape, and I found in an old abandoned antique store this. And she sent me this picture, and that's coming to my office. I'm going to put it underneath our orange ceiling, and it's going to remind me that we're in competition with the future, and we have to move fast, and we have to be open, and we have to be more inventive, and we have to be less, in my mind, logical. Because in my mind, the best way to compete against the future is through the intense love of what we do and who we do it for. And I get to do it with these people every day in my office in San Francisco and New York. And thank you very much.
Purpose, love, look up. Great, I just wanted to do that. There we go. I hope we paid our insurance. Fantastic, mesmerized. How many times did he use that word, fantastic? Anticipating the future. By the way, note that we live almost all of our lives in the state of anticipation, whether you notice it or not. Because we've evolved in a context where we need to anticipate the threat to our survival. Even when watching a movie, when mesmerized by the movie, our brain is finishing sentences and imagining what's behind the door. There are entire cottage industries to help human beings live in the moment. Stop considering the future, just experience and love what you have today. Well, the reality is we've been hardwired to anticipate. There was a slide in there about Marimekko in the United States and how Brian was inspired by the ability to purchase Finnish design, Nordic design. And I'll point out Gordon Siegel, who's here, wave Gordon, he and his wife Carol founded Crate and Barrel. And this was one of the inspirations that led them to found that great organization.